and we compare our observation with other stations globally and see how it is varying, and that's why we confirm that our observation is flawless. Because this is very essential. We are dealing with a very sensitive number. So the precision, the accuracy are very, very, very important point in terms of greenhouse gases. Because if you have an uncertainty in your greenhouse gas concentration measurement, that will be propagated while you are estimating your climate change temperature. And your every kind of sustainable planning is based on this temperature changes. So it is very, very critical. So what my interests lie in, I use isotope technique. So as I say, this is a small schematic. If you see here, atmosphere has a one isotope character. These three reservoir has a different isotope character. I denoted it with different color. When the interaction happen, after some point of time, you see in atmosphere, you have some red balls. So what I do, I measure atmospheric CO2 and its isotope and try to understand, okay, there are more red. That means it has come from man-made sources, or it has come from anthropogenic sources. That's how it's called isotopic fingerprinting technique. So I'm interested in monitoring the urban region in India as well as abroad. I also do work in the aquatic regime to understand how the gas exchange between air and sea is happening, and especially what is happening in a freshwater system. Right now I'm working in Arctic, but today I thought of just sharing few slides with my very first observation from Bangalore, Indian region on atmospheric CO2. So I might take a couple of more minutes to share some of the results with you. This is our station, which is IISc Bangalore, which was set in the urban region, a very, very densely populated urban region of the Bangalore city. And this was our campus, and we have done a pilot study where we connected sample from different parts and confirmed that this is a well-representative urban station. Why Bangalore? Because Bangalore has seen a rapid change in its city growth, and which has largely impacted its temperature in terms of almost a degree by 5 to 10 years time scale. Now, our objective was to establish a greenhouse gas monitoring laboratory in India for the first time and identifying what are the factors causing the greenhouse gas variability over India. So this was a very, I don't want to go in detail in this. This was our experimental setup. So you all, if anybody want, you can do this kind of setup. So you can collect air which has oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and ozone, etc., etc. And we extract CO2 from this air sample using something called cryogenic extraction method. And then we measure the CO2 for its concentration using pressure volume relationship, which is called PV equal to energy, or sometimes using gas chromatography. Then we measure the isotopic ratio in mass spectrometer, which does a mass scan based on the isotopal of masses, as I mentioned in my previous slides. This is a schematic of the extraction system. The one slide which I wanted to, what are the principle which we follow while separating CO2? This is again a school level chemistry. We all know about the phase diagram of CO2. So this is the part where we focus. We freeze the CO2 from its gas to solid phase while extracting using liquid nitrogen, which is minus 96 degree centigrade temperature. So we use liquid nitrogen to extract the CO2. Basically, we solidify the CO2 from the air, and then we measure that CO2 in, as well as you remove it from its minus 96 degree temperature, it comes back to its gaseous phase again. And then we take that CO2 sample and put it in the mass spectrometer for its isotopic analysis. And obviously I said calibration precisions are the very critical part. So there are international standards available, which is always measured in your system to calibrate data, because you have to produce the data which is compatible to a globally accepted scale. NOAA basically defines this scale, and what they do, they circulate standards globally to different labs and ask every lab to measure their standard and report back to them. And that's how they try to bring all the lab under the same umbrella of measurements. Luckily and fortunately, I was part of all these exercises, and I did a lot of interlaboratory calibration comparison exercises, and all my observations are compatible with the NOAA scale. So this is an on-set of observation. This was the air sample collected from Bangalore city in morning and afternoon time. You see the concentration was very high in the early morning, and the corresponding carbon isotope ratio was very negative compared to what is happening in the afternoon. So this is called an inverse relationship. So you have higher CO2 expected to be from some anthropogenic sources. And as I mentioned earlier, the anthropogenic sources usually have a negative isotopic character, which is seen here. So when this inverse relationship is plotted in this diagram, we call a killing plot. The end member of this relationship is called a two-component mixing model, gives you the source isotopic character. This minus 23.5 is a clear indication that it is coming from fossil fuel or biomass burning. The same exercise and why this increase is happening is meteorological features. As when we travel in air, in aeroplane, we sometimes have seen in the early morning there are thick layer, brown layer we could see from the airplane. What is that? That's called an inversion layer. Why that happens? It happens like immediately after the sunset, the earth cool rapidly, but the upper still remain warm, and that's why you see a temperature anomaly which is positive, and you see an inversion layer which acts as a lead. So what happens? Whatever is emitted from the ground that cannot go up and mix with the free atmosphere. So the pollution level remain close to the ground. Same happen for CO2. Whatever the nighttime emitted CO2 plus the previous day vehicular emitted CO2, that all remain underneath this, underneath this black lead, which called the inversion layer. Thus, if you go in the early morning and you measure these grasses, you always see a very high concentration. And obviously, you capture more anthropogenic sources. But as the day progresses, this layer vanishes because of the heating, and it's because of the well mixing in the atmosphere, and this emission get well mixed and diluted in the air column. This observation was confirmed using a separate set of experiment where we flew with an airplane. It's basically a glider plane, which was a collaboration with Hindustan Aeronautical Limited in collaboration with IAC. So we basically flew on this helicopter to do a sampling at different height, and we see how the isotopic characters are changing. See, it's very negative at the ground. As you go up, it is more enriching, and everything is well mixed above certain layer. This observation was done in the early morning, so we could see the features of the inversion layer. So using a two-component mixing model, we could identify that early morning the free air contribution was very minimal, and it is all polluted air. And this research was once featured in the news channel, and the major message conveyed from this research was early morning, the morning walk may not be very good for your health because atmosphere is full of all different type of pollutant at this time. So the recommendation going from this study was you go for morning walk, but go just after the sun rises. Give at least a half an hour to 1 hour time after the sunrise, and then go for the morning walk so that you get a better air quality. This study we continued for the different time frame of the year, like whether the diurnal feature, we call it a diurnal morning, afternoon feature, a diurnal feature, whether it is repeated in different months. Yes, it is there in every month, except for the southwest monsoon month, that the June, July, August month. All the time we see this variation. The monsoon months, it's all well mixed, which is because of the atmospheric convection. During monsoon, what happens? There's a strong convection and mixing throughout the atmospheric column is happening, and that's hindered this inversion layer formation in the morning, and thus we could not see the diurnal variation. And using this relationship, we try to identify the sources for different months, and yes, for every month we confirm that the source is around minus 25, which is typical fossil fuel and biomass. So this confirmed that for at least for a Bangalore city, the major contributing sources are the fossil fuel or the biomass burning. The same study we continued for different seasons, and we find something interesting. You see here, as this is the monsoon months. As a monsoon month progresses, you have a very low concentration, you have an enriched isotope, but in the pre-monsoon months, you have a very negative isotopic character and very high CO2. And that's because near to Bangalore, there are two forests called Bandipura Murumalai forest. Every year, those two forests gets a natural forest fire. And luckily, or unluckily, I would say, it affects the air quality, it affects the CO2. And we could capture the forest fire emitted very negative carbon isotope with a very elevated CO2, and which was not present in a 2011, which is a La Nina year. And we all know that when there is a La Nina event, the rainfall begins, the monsoon begins a little early, and that stops any kind of fire events. So that helped us to have some sort of flat profile in this time frame, which was and missing the seasonal cycle. So what we try to convince here that CO2 variability over a station is affected by two factors. One is the anthropogenic sources. Another is the natural forcing, like the climate or the synoptic weather features. Like as you more progress into monsoon, there is more rainfall, more vegetation, and which takes up more CO2 from the atmosphere. Thus, basically, it cleans the atmosphere, and that's why you have very little signature on the anthropogenic CO2 being observed in the atmosphere. Whereas in the pre-monsoon and post-monsoon months, especially in the winter months, when you have boundary layer impact or the nocturnal boundary layer very prominent, what happens? You have very polluted signature throughout the day, especially in the morning hours. This study also helped us to identify a general feature of the sources, and we confirm that fossil fuel, biomass burning, and cement industries are the major sources for the city. So this kind of study, so this I already explained about the key achievement. This kind of study gave us a confidence that at a city scale, what are the major emitting sources? Because what happens, when we try to deal about the climate change problem, if we look at the global issues, we may not be able to hit the problem correctly, because as I mentioned, it is also a regional problem, and it is very much variable at a regional scale. For example, if I say that let us stop all the thermal power plants in Kolkata region, or let's say close all the thermal power plants in Delhi, it may not be right, because Delhi may not have a problem from the thermal power plant. Rather, Delhi might have a problem for nearest biomass burning from the rural part of the Delhi, which is getting transported to the major city of Delhi, and we are getting pollutions, or we are getting more greenhouse gas increase. So the major message from here that we need to understand the problem at a local scale, or to be specific at an urban scale, because urban region is something where the entire population is going to live in next 10-15 years. Thus, to fight the climate change, we need to focus on urban region. And also we need to focus on two factors. One is sources, another is the monsoon dynamics, which is very unique in case of our India. Now, coming to the concluding slide. So there are two things which I wanted to convey in this talk, is that climate change is a real crisis. Yes, it is affecting, it is hindering, it is affecting basically our food availability. It is impacting the water crisis. So obviously food, drinking water, health are the major issues to survive a good life in this earth. So yes, climate change is a real crisis. Second part, which I probably could convince all of you, is the greenhouse gas is the reason, the primary reason. And what we can do about it, we need to monitor the greenhouse gases very, very precisely at a regional or an urban scale, so that we hit the problem locally, and then we extrapolate from there and say, okay, this, if we work on a regional scale, on an urban scale in this way, it might impact the overall India's contribution to the greenhouse gas variability and to the climate change. So we all talk about a lot of things, but sometimes I also sit down and think that I know climate change is happening, it is a problem. I know greenhouse gas is a reason, and we all blame that thermal industries, power industries, vehicular emission are the culprit. But am I doing something wrong, or am I right, or what I am doing? So I thought of combining everything together so that we all can talk about this and think about it. Like this will be today's takeaway from this talk. Like what is needed? We need to speak out more about the climate change problems, because there are a lot of deniers who are not denier by their nature, who might be the denier because they are not exposed to the real fact. So as a responsible citizen or a responsible researcher, it is our moral duty to convey the message to everyone and speak to every people about the climate change problem, so that you need to tell people that yes, we have a disease, then only we can do a treatment. Otherwise it will always remain ignored, and we have no time remain to get it ignored. Next point is that we have to stop reducing the food waste, the water waste, We should focus on more on green commute. Like, if possible, we can walk. We can use cycles rather than using vehicles or personal car more of the time. We can more focus on the renewable energy sources. We can use energy wisely. Like, we can be very careful about while switching off, switching on the lights while leaving the room, especially. It can actually save a lot of money as well. Now, we need to urge our government to take a bold and ambitious climate action plan, and probably we have to direct our vote toward that direction, and then government will be active in doing something, battling the climate change issues. Last but not the least, is that we can consume less. It doesn't mean that we will not eat, we will not drink, we will not enjoy our life, but we can reduce our waste. Once we consume less, we purchase less, we can actually recycle, reuse things. And what happens, like, and let us enjoy life more in a natural environment, with family, with friends, so that we consume less, we buy less, we save our money, we save the nature, we save the production, we don't waste things, and thus we all can live a very happy and healthy life. So with this, I wish all of you have a very good day today, and also let us do something to fight the climate change together. I am trying to do my part. Hope I could convince all of you to do your part from today. With this, I end my talk here. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, Dr. Guha. That was an excellent presentation, such lucid graphs, I think, and on a very pertinent topic, I think. And I kind of also feel a little excited because we were the first audience to your observations from Bangalore. So thank you so much for that. And you very pertinently kind of focused on the global climate change, and you also, which I thought was a very important point, focused on our responsibility as global citizens and what we can do to to stop this this accelerated rate at which the global climate has been changing and the crisis that we are in. So we have a couple of questions over here, and my apologies in advance that I won't be able to take all the questions because of paucity of time. And I must also thank my colleagues from the Environmental Science Department who are helping me sift through these questions. Maybe we can take two questions. One, which is by Pompey Sharkar. She has asked you, what is the source of global average temperature?
Okay. So this is from NASA Goddard Station. I probably have put the link also here. You can type the global average temperature NASA, and you can directly go to the. It's from NASA Goddard Station. GODDART. It's from NASA.
Okay. Thank you so much.
For the next question, I think we have two questions from Monomita Sharkar, but I think I'll take the question which I'm also a little interested to know about. This is her second question, where she's asking you, and also very topical because we are in the midst of the pandemic. In this COVID period and worldwide long lockdown in the last year, was decreasing the pollution level worldwide? Was the pollution level, did it decrease? If I got that right, yeah.
Yeah, it's very favorite question to me. Thank you for asking that. Actually, when the COVID started, we all have a feel that yes, we are going to see something good. And yes, in terms of air pollution, when we talk about the pollution, we mostly talk about NOx, SOx, the aerosols in the atmosphere. Especially the CO2 or the greenhouse gases is not considered as a pollutant globally. Now the question is, yes, there was decrease. I would say a local decrease in terms of emission, but if you look at the CO2 data from the global stations like the NOAA stations, there was no change, there was no decrease. That's what is the point is. Yes, we probably have reduced the emission, but what we are seeing in the atmosphere is the resultant. So even imagine a situation before the industrial evolution. There was a natural factors like which was maintaining the greenhouse gases, the biosphere atmosphere interaction, the ocean. They were kind of maintaining the greenhouse gases. And then what we did, we started doing our industrial activity and it produced a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere. So we already shoot a bit. So even if we reduce the emission, and we probably have to wait for at least 10 to 15 years of producing zero emission, then only we might see some kind of decrease. It is kind of a steady state already achieved. So that's the reason we haven't seen a very slight decrease in CO2 concentration because of the COVID. Rather, the concentration has increased. It's followed the global trend or followed the, I would say, the long-term trend. But yes, there's a little dip. If you see every month temperature data, you can see it from NOAA GMDL site. Probably I could have put the site somewhere, but you can contact me later on. I can share. It's very interesting. They put the real-time data, and you can see, like, especially, like the lockdown started in March, April, May, June. There was a slight decrease, and we all are so excited about it. But finally, it just came back, and it just shot up. And now the crisis is. It was in prediction. There were some of the climate scientists. They were already worried because it's like something. If you stagnate a water and you release it, it moves with a more force, right? It's a general principle. The same is happening in this case. When the lockdown will be open, more people will be traveling, and entire balance will be disrupted. So now it is more important to focus on greenhouse gases because after the pandemic, our energy demand is going to change. It's already changed, right? Plus, we are all facing the climate change issues and the climate crisis very, very critically. So we are all trying to invest more on the renewable energy. So, and what is happening exactly on greenhouse gases? That's something interesting. So I would say that next 4 or 5 years, I would say 10 years, the greenhouse gas, the research will see more interesting results.
Thank you so much for that great answer. And I think with that, we can put an end to the first talk of the day. And also a great start to the webinar because you so greatly, outlined the entire global scenario and kind of gave us a comparative, scale with which when we move closer to home and when we talk about the North Bengal region in particular, it will give us a scale to kind of map it against. So thank you so much, Dr. Guha. We are so fortunate to have you join us over here in the middle of the night, which I keep repeating. Thank you so much.
No problem. I enjoyed thoroughly. So I will try my best to be awake. So thank you so much for all of your time. Thank you for the good feedback as well.
So moving on, and now we also have our honorable chief guest who has joined us, Professor Shaha. So before we move on to the next talk of the day, I would take the opportunity to welcome our chief guest over here. So we're delighted, as all of you know, we are delighted to have with us today Professor Nimai Chandra Shaha, Vice Chancellor of the University of Bardhaman, as the chief guest. And although Professor Shaha needs no special introduction, it might be worthwhile here perhaps to mention his extensive work on fishery sciences, aquatic toxicology, ecology, and environmental sciences, which has not only won him recognition in India, but also from institutions abroad. His 26 pages long CV might give you a more comprehensive view of his excellent academic credentials, but what it will not tell you is what a beloved Professor Shaha is. And I'll take this moment to just share a little anecdote with all of you over here. Our principal, Dr. Mridha, when he was, inviting Professor Shaha for this webinar, he shared this story with the organizing team, with all of us, and he said that he called Professor Shaha at 9 o'clock in the night. And even at that time, he was still in his office and he was sitting surrounded by his students. He was talking to them, he was answering their questions. And, that is what Professor Shaha is. And we are so fortunate that we have him with us here as our chief guest. Sir, I would please request you to take the audio and the video over here and please share the welcome address. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorima. Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. Respected Principal of the college, Dr. Virendra Mridha, Professor Ranjan Roy, Department of Geography and Applied Geography, North Bengal University.
Thank you,
Dr. Hadida Yasmin, Associate Professor, Department of Geology, Kudbihar Panchanan Burma University. Dr. Tania Guho, Research Associate, Department of Geography, University of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Sri Deepak Sarkar, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Convener of the program. Dr. Onurima Chando, Program Coordinator. All the beloved teachers, staff and the students of the college, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends. It is a great honor for me to speak at the occasion of one-day webinar on climate change, biodiversity and conservation in northern West Bengal, organized by the Department of Environmental Studies and Internal Quality Assurance Cell of the college. I am really delighted to have this opportunity to remain present in the inaugurating ceremony. At the onset, I congratulate the principal, Dr. Mridha, and all members of the IQAC cell of this college for arranging such an program, such an important program. We know that the Birsa Munda College is an important college, and it was established in the year 2018 under the leadership of present Honorable Chief Minister. Birsa Munda College is one among the few Hindi medium colleges with co-educational system affiliated to the University of North Bengal. Birsa Munda College has a great importance in respect of its locality. It is basically a tea plantation area. It is located in one of the crucial areas of district Darjeeling of West Bengal, India. The geographical location of the institution is non-rail with other Indian states, as this region, which is also popularly called the Chicken Neck Corridor, connects the 8 northeastern Indian states with the rest of India and also shares international boundaries with 4 major South Asian economies, namely Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and the Tibet. The main aim of the establishment of this college was to impart quality education to the socially and economically poor people of Hatigisha and its surrounding areas, and to inspire the students of these areas to move away from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge. I'm very happy to learn that the college has been fostering and academic and career success through the development of critical thinking, effective communication, creativity, and cultural awareness in a safe, accessible, and affordable learning environment. The college is trying to build a better future for all the students to become them the national leader of the country in every sphere of our life. I congratulate the organizers for both the vision and ambition in pulling together this conference with so many topics being treated with such impressive participation and with fantastic fellow speakers. Now, I would like to convey my few important feelings on the present climate condition. The human society has taken nature for granted for so long. We assume that season will follow season, that our fields will be pollinated, the yield bountiful harvests, that the soil will be fertile, and that the rains will come. We assume that this very fine web of life on which our every existence depends will remain unaltered, even as we carelessly pave over, extract, emit, cause effluence, fragment, and exterminate. You all know that the biodiversity is critical for human existence, but biodiversity is also under the huge threats globally. As we destroy biodiversity, we not only lose species, we also lose the very foundation of our existence. You know that the biodiversity produces our food. The recent reports published in Biological Conservation highlights the loss of insects, for example. The study actually finds that over 40% of the insect species are threatened with extinction, and that habitat loss by conversion to intensive agriculture is the main driver of the declines, while agrochemical pollutants, invasive species, and the climate change are additional causes. We know that biodiversity also secures our health. We need to think of biodiversity as both a source of health and medicine, as well as a pathogen. It is well known that exposure to nature reduces our blood pressure, our stress levels, enhances our children's cognitive development, and of course, when we move in nature, helps reduce incidence cardiovascular diseases and diabetes. So ensuring that we have to access to nature matters. But beyond this, nature is also our pharmacy. In fact, more than 62% of all novel active substances for treating disease approved between 1981 to 2002 initially derived from natural biological sources such as plant, fungi, and bacteria. But nature and biodiversity can also be a source of pathogens. Infringe on nature and zoonotic diseases can impact on the human population. Bats carrying Ebola and corona, monkeys carrying the HIV virus, bird flu, malaria are just a few examples. We know that the biodiversity underpins our jobs and our economies. We also know that the biodiversity and vibrant productive ecosystems of the northern West Bengal are the foundation of our state, underpinning key sectors such as agriculture, fisheries, and timber industries. Indeed, on a global scale, about 50% of the world's population relies on nature and natural resources for their jobs and livelihoods. Biodiversity and ecosystems provide a key ingredient for the very stability of the society itself. Increasingly, evidence is emerging on the links between ecosystem stability and societal stability. Or, put it another way, link between ecosystem collapse and societal collapse. While there are many other causes of conflict, strife, and refugee flow, it is well documented that when nature sends us its invoice for our mismanaging our planet, and those invoices are coming with an ever greater frequency, they come in the form of droughts, floods, zoonotic diseases, fires, landslides, glacier smells, and so on. Incidence of COVID-19 is the burning invoice of nature in the present day. When nature sends us these invoices, agricultural productivity drops, scarcity sets in, and conflict, strife, and refugee flows tend to increase. But biodiversity and nature are also our identity. Nature, its sense, the sounds, the trees, and the birds, all of these provide us with a sense of identity, a sense of home, the safe place, the known. I am sure that when each of you think back to your most happy moments, chances are that you are in the nature. For me, that is certainly the case. Standing with my parents as a child by the sea, witnessing nature's beauty as the sun would set over a golden ocean, streaking with my brothers as we were running through an intense summer rainstorm in the forest near our house, getting soaked for the pure pleasure of it. These moments define who we are, define where we belong. They root us in. So, endangered biodiversity means we are losing our food, our health, our jobs, our economy, and our peace. So, losing biodiversity means we lose our peace, we lose our joy, we lose our humanity, we lose ourselves. Everyone knows that nature is very forgiving. Give nature half the chance and it will bounce back. It is worth mentioning that with good conservation measures, the rate of loss can be turned around. If we invest to protect nature's infrastructure, that will protect our forests, our mangroves, our estuaries, sea grasses, coral reefs, wetlands, our marshes, our natural coastlines, etc. It will not only protect us, but also it will become more species rich and retain nature's diversity. Species can be brought back from near the brink of extinction through good conservation and protection investments, through sound policies and smart interventions. But once a species is extinct, it is forever and there is no coming back. I also feel that to secure life on Earth, we need bold transformative action underpinned by sound science and effective policy. We need a world which will be free of poverty and hunger. It will be a healthier, better educated world with greater social justice, clean water, and sanitation. It will be a world that will tackle climate challenges in part because it runs on affordable clean energy. It will be a world where the trend of dying biodiversity will be reversed, thanks in great part to the fact that our oceans and terrestrial ecosystems have been given a new lease of life. This is the world that we want. I hope that we must now do the actions we must take in the context of the post-2021 goals. The things we must do for nature. Finally, I want to say that the planet is in the midst of the Earth's sixth mass extinction, and we are the driving factor. But here is the good news, because it is a game changer. It is particularly relevant here today. We can change all of this. We have the evidence that conservation works and the knowledge needed to take action. We can and must work with nature to conserve biodiversity, and by doing so help address many of our greatest challenges, such as putting an end to hunger, poverty, and inequality. This is because nature plays a critical yet often underappreciated role in our economic well-being, our health, and many critical aspects of our life. For instances, coral reef ecosystems that directly support millions of people through fisheries and income from tourism. Even the more humble of species, such as the insects pollinating our crops and the microbes enriching our soil, play a key role in the world's food production and water security. By conserving soil biodiversity, we could help halt desertification, rainforest, mangroves, and seagrass meadows, help protect us from the worst effects of the climate change. Together, these ecosystems form a web that sustains all life on Earth, including ours. From this webinar, we need to have mobilized the public at large, the media, the gardeners, the nature lovers, the young people who are not only tomorrow's leader, but who are showing us that they are at young and tender ages the better stewards of nature than we have been. We need to mobilize the private sector, a sector that underpins growth and jobs and well-being. We need to support our farmers so that they can be the part of the solution. We need to shift our policies to incentivize nature positive action. So much to do. Everyone truly has one thing that they can do for nature, because nature does everything for us. And because our natural world is so intimately connected to everything, that we strive for this great vision. If we conserve our biodiversity, we can get food security and water security. We can maintain sustainable biodiversity for the future, ensure world peace. We can change our world for the better. With these few words, I would like to conclude my talk. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words about the college, and also for furthering this conversation with which this entire webinar was planned in the first place. And we're so fortunate to have you with us. I can't mention that enough times. Thank you so much. Moving on with today's event, we move on to our next speaker. We have with us Dr. Hatigisha Yasmin, Associate Professor, Department of Zoology, joining us from Ponchanan Burma University, Coach Bihar. Anything that is said about Dr. Yasmin is little. She has to her credit numerous publications and research projects, which has won her accolades both within the country and abroad. In 2016, she spent several months in the USA after winning the Fulbright Nehru International Education Administrator Award. And apart from this, she has also won several Young Scientist Awards for her contribution to her field. So without further ado, let's move on to her talk. She will be talking about habitat and conservation of black soft-shelled turtles of punishment. Ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Urmima ma'am. It's quite I'd rather say a delightful moment to be here, no? And even it's respected our Professor Nimai Chandra Shah, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Burdwan University, and and all the teachers, and thanks to Shulomna ma'am, she was, very, very much continuing. We're having a conversation, gradually changing the date and everything. So is wonderful, and Tanya ma'am, it was a wonderful lecture that she gave. So I have been told by Shulona ma'am to cover not only the Banishar, to say something about the conservation of North Bengal. So I have tried to cover a little bit what we all know. I've added a little bit more fact to it. So shall I share my slide here?
Yes, sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Okay. Can you see this?
Yes, it's visible.
It came to full screen? Okay.
Yes, no, not full screen. I can still see the, like, you still need to present it, I think.
Yeah, I did that, but I don't know, my laptop is sometimes having this issue. I'll just check it once more. Okay.
Can you see the fourth icon right at the top? I think that, yeah.
Just a second. Yeah. And this, let me do it once again. Is it still in that mode or it's in a full screen?
No, it's still in that mode, but ma'am, I think you can you see the fourth icon right at the top? I think that would be the play slide icon.
Yeah, I did the slideshow, but actually my laptop is, I think it's having some issues. Can we continue like this? Is it okay?
Yes, it's pretty
okay,
clear.
Fine. So when we talk about North Bengal, what things come into our mind? You know, we live in a heaven actually. It's a treasure trove of green forests, rivers, mountains, tea gardens. So it's such a wonderful feeling that we stay in a place which is blessed with so much of green and blue all around, which is soothing as well as it's the best part to live within. So to talk about the forest cover of North Bengal, I will not highlight this part. This is what I have got from this forest report. 2019 report says that the total forest cover of West Bengal is about 16,901 square kilometer. And among this cover, the very dense forest is about 3,000, more than 3,000 square kilometer. And then the moderately dense forest, which is about 4,160, and then the open forest, which is 9,722. And the districts in the North Bengal are having, like you can see here, the ratios or the area mentioned, which I'm not going to read out. We all know about it. So we are actually covered with entire North Bengal, in the Tarai and the hills everywhere. It's the green forest holding rich biodiversity. So when we talk about, anyway, what I'll be doing in this presentation, I have highlighted few of the species which are very important to North Bengal, and which we, whenever we come to North Bengal, or when we visit, when other people from outside visit to our place, the first thing that comes to the mind is, this enormous, huge species, elephants. So North Bengal is one important elephant habitat, housing nearly 400 resident elephants. And the protected and the reserve forests that we have in the northern West Bengal are the only habitat housing 90% of the state elephants. So that's huge ratio we are holding of this population in this North Bengal state, as including the Northeast Indian elephant population. So this region of the state is the habitat of, rather than along with the elephants, there are rhinoceros, tiger, boar, we all know about it. But what is happening with this biodiversity, or with this, there are a lot of conflicts, human-elephant conflicts we have been facing since decades. We have been observing. Now, we say that they have entered our territory. Actually, that's not the case. We have encroached into their territory, right? Because it was all forest. They have been staying. This is the place that they're moving around, is their own territory, but we have actually encroached. So this is leading to conflicts. Now, we all know that This area of North Bengal is a zone that is interspersed with human settlements, tea gardens, as well as the roadways and the railways. So the elephant habitat that we have is around 2,200 square kilometers in the West Bengal, in this North Bengal region, and it constitutes about 1.5% of total elephant population in the country. And West Bengal, shows the highest rate of human conflict, elephant conflict ratio, and that the compensation that the government pays quite a huge amount in respect to the other states of the country. So now the conflict is why it's rising. In due course of time, when we are going for development, we need roads, we need railways. So there are the railway connecting the Alipurduar area. It goes through the forest, and that was a big conflict and issue for a long time, as well as this electrocution that has been done. And then sometimes there is a poisoning and forceful, there is a high threat because the corridors are being intervened. The corridors where the elephants pass through from one place to another, they are being intervened by the roads and the railways. So this leads to the great conflict of elephants in this area.
Ma'am, sorry to disturb you here. Are you using the other slides? In case you are, can you?
It's not changing?
No, it's not changing. So you'll have to, I think, manually click on them every time. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
So, okay. Thank you. So I was talking about this, what the elephant human conflict that we have in North Bengal, and we have been facing them since decades. Now the recent COVID situation, though it's a pandemic and we all have been suffering, we have lost our near and dear ones, and it's very devastating everywhere. But somewhere, if you see the nature, it's healing itself. We have been always, so these all animals and the birds and the species, they have got a free space to roam around. Maybe they needed that. We have not been giving it. So if you can look at it in that way, we suffered. But then in the other perspective, the species that were being restricted to they have been confined because we have been moving all around. That led them to move freely for a while. And that was the thing that good thing happened out of all the odds in this COVID. So there are so many instances of, we have heard in the news that the elephants, the tigers are coming the roads, entering the houses, the bisons. So this is what, actually this is their territory, what I mean to say that. So we need not to take it that way. Sometime what happens, we distract them, we threaten them. So when they get threatened, then they become vulnerable. So this is where we have to look into. This is where we have to consider that we should let them go safely to their own place when these situations are coming up. Now, next is what comes into our mind when we come to Boxa. And this is what we see. Boxa holds about more than 400 butterfly species. If you go to Boxa before the post-monsoon or pre-monsoon season, you will see the butterflies doing mud puddling. Mud puddling is one of the behavior of butterfly because when the soil is very rich with salt and minerals, you see them sticking to the mud or the soil nearby the river beds or nearby the, wherever there are enriched, rich amount of soil containing the mineral and salts. So these are the butterfly photographs that I have clicked whenever I went to. So I put it into one picture. So this is where, we are so rich, the North Bengal. The region not only, it holds so many types of species that we have come across, but then, so we should be very proud of being where we are, and we should try to protect them as far as we can. So next, one more species that we'll talk about is the black soft shell turtle. Now see, this species was considered as extinct in wild till last year. So this black soft shell turtle, we found it in the entire globe in 3 places. One in Bangladesh, it's confined to one of the shrine or the temple in Bangladesh, and then in 2 states in India. One is Guwahati, Assam. They are also confined in one of the shrine or the temple, and the third one in the entire world is the Banishar, where this turtle is being called Mohan. And I want to highlight one thing here is that how a community, if they want to protect a species, they can do it, because this is the important part of the people of North Bengal. We are very much attached to our nature. We are very much sympathetic toward our own species, and we play a great role in the conservation. So this is one study that our students have done. And so what we have found is that this species earlier, this is the primary location. I think many of us who stay in this area, they have been to this temple, Shiv temple of Banishar, and there is a pond nearby where we see this black soft-shell turtle. Nobody knows actually since when these turtles are here, but the oral history suggests that in 1750s, when there was a renovation of this pond by the Maharaja of Kuch Bihar that time, he had constructed this pond, and since then people remember or recall that Mohan is still residing there. But the important part of this species in Banishar is that, as in two other places that I have mentioned, in Bangladesh as well as in Assam, they are confined, they are restricted to that temple pond only. But people of Banishar think it as a one of the Lord Vishnu's avatar, Kurmo, right? So they treat it as a god. So they have been protecting them. So what we found that this is the primary location of the temple pond of Banishar, and these are all the spots that we have located that the turtle is being residing. One thing I would like to mention here is that Kuch Bihar is one of the district of West Bengal where we find maximum number of wetlands, the water bodies. If you come to Kuch Bihar, you'll find there are many man-made water bodies as well as natural water bodies surrounding the district, and frequent flash floods. What it happens when there is this long flash flood for a long time in the monsoon area time, then all the water bodies get connected, and somehow these turtles could manage the way to rest or to migrate themselves to other water bodies. Which there are lots of water-lodged areas surrounding, and then there are community ponds surrounding the Banishar's area. So these are the locations that we have located the turtle. So the turtle has, they have flourished well in the habitat, and the people of this area have let them to grow, choose their own place and survive. So this is the best thing, that wonderful example of community conservation. And now ICN has changed the status for whatever study they have or the data they have together. They have changed the status from extinct from wild to critically endangered species. Earlier it was in this region, extinct in wild, but now as being the species is being seen elsewhere, like this flourishing well in its own habitat, they have changed it to critically endangered species. So what we found that the students have done quite extensive survey with the local people, and they have found that the local people allow these turtles to be in their pond, irrespective of what they know, that they are there in the pond for their fishes, because fish are one important feed for the turtles. These are wild turtles, they're very aggressive, but still with the love for the species, people have been allowing them to reside in their own ponds that we usually don't see elsewhere. So apart from the pond area, the agricultural pond, water reservoir, even in household drainages, irrigation ditches, everywhere we found this turtle freely moving from one place to another. So these are the areas that we found. This is one of the infant that we have seen. This is the turtle. Here you can see. This is drainage. So everywhere you can locate. If you go to Baneshwar area, we'll find it's flourishing very well. But in spite of that, there are several threats and challenges that comes to the species. It was the first time one train accident happened, probably because there was a lockdown period, railways were not moving, and this species may be migrating, without any intervention, crossing the railway roads. But with the starting, when the rail resumed their services, probably this poor fella got into that. Apart from that, as because it is present in many of the ponds, actually it's present in all the ponds in an area of Baneshwar. And if you move towards the Pundibari to even to Alipurduar, we'll find the water bodies near the roadsides. We'll find these turtles. So these turtles are being poached, for their meat or the cartilage, and even for the medicinal purposes. Sometimes they get caught in fishing nets, and if the fisherman is very sympathetic enough, they leave them to go again back, or if there are poachers, then they catch it up. Very recent incidents of one poaching incidents have come when they have caught people of trafficking this turtle from one place to another. So these are the threats that every species actually come across. But then the best part is, as long as the people love the species, as long as we all are being responsible enough, we can do our part in conserving the species. One more example I'd like to take is of the community conservation that initiative has been taken. This is, I'm talking about the Himalayan salamander. If you go towards Sitong, this Namthing lake area, you'll find, this Himalayan salamander is found mostly in the altitude of 1,000 to 3,000 meters, and it lives in a full forest full of lichens and freshwater bodies with a water body which are not polluted. So that is their breeding area. So but these are on the verge of extinction due to the growing human encroachment, because people are filling up the water bodies, and the local localities are coming up with households because the population is increasing. So this is somehow is causing the problem with the species breeding and their flourishing. And these species are being killed or trafficked for the medicinal purpose, because the body parts are often being used for curing back pain and body pain. That is what the literature talks about. So this is the lake area in Namthing lake where it was found. So one group of naturewildlife.org, they have taken initiative in a project to breed. They found that in their survey that the salamanders were very nicely, or with a large group of good population of salamanders were found in the Namthing Pokhri areas, which comes from the Darjeeling division district, Kashing district, towards the Sitong side if you go. So here they have found a quite large amount of population, and then they decided to restrict this area from the tourist places so that it can be bred properly. And now they are, if you go there, you will see, you'll find a lot of these salamanders you can find inside the water, because these are the only species, like it's the only one in which the larval tail is retained throughout its life. You'll find the tail throughout their life, and it's totally aquatic ancestors. So they are often regarded as a living fossil. So this is the most important part. So the initiative taken up by the society, the conservation areas, and they have made this lake a breeding area for the Himalayan salamander, and it's working quite well. Now, when we talk about a pollution-free area, if you go to North Bengal, because for any species to flourish, it's very important that the area or the habitat they have been thriving has to be non-polluted. That's a very important aspect. And in this concern, if you compare it with the other places of the state or the country, we are in a very good position. So if you go to the hills or to the Tarai in this northern area, you'll find huge amounts of lichens. These are the pictures I have clicked in this area wherever I have traveled around in North Bengal. So these lichens are, the more lichens you see, you'll understand this is a pollution-free area, because lichens will not grow if it is a polluted area. Lichens will only grow if there is no pollution. So more lichen indicates the less pollution, and less pollution indicates flourish or conservation of more species, or you will have more biodiversity. So these are all where we are living in. This is the area where we are thriving well with the ecosystem together, working together for the betterment of the species and conserving them. Next, I will highlight one aspect that we have come across this season, maybe due to this COVID, and the water bodies, the boats and the streamers were not on the rivers, and that gave a very good passage to the Gangetic dolphins, and and we were very lucky that we could witness the Gangetic dolphins in the Kuch Bihar area. Is in Balarhut area, because this is one of the species which are very much in threat due to this accidental killing that happens in fishing by catch, or sometimes they're being poached because they have huge amount of fat in their body, and that oil is sometimes used as a medicinal purpose. So they are being killed and the fats are being taken, and even these incidences of poaching recently have been witnessed in this area, and a person was being caught. So these Gangetic dolphins are basically resides in the Brahmaputra river system. So if you see, so this is the Balarhut area where we are. This is the picture one of our student Ripon had photographed. It's very hard to click because very for a fraction of a second they come up from the water, and so he could manage to click one of it. So if you see, this is the Balarhut area where this portion. So this is the junction where there is a Bangladesh border and the India, right? So this is the river where we are finding this dolphin. We were witnessing that for a certain while, last few months. So now how they came here? If you see that, see this is the Raighat river from Assam, which comes here, and this is Torsha that is coming. If you go further, then this Torsha is connected with this Kaljani. So this Kaljani Torsha together comes here and joins in this Balarhut, and from here Raighat rivers, they come and join here. And this is Dudh Kumar, the river portion in the Bangladesh area. So this is one joint area. Now if you come down where this, as we have told that they mostly reside in the Brahmaputra. So if you see, so this is the Balarhut area. So this river comes here, and this is the Brahmaputra coming up and joins. From this side, the river Padma comes, the Gangetic Padma comes and joins. And this is from the Assam, the Brahmaputra comes. Now what happens when there is flood, like in the Brahmaputra? So the water current rises. Now this species doesn't like much water current. They are very happy in residing in an area where there is less water current. So this is a usual behavioral pattern of this species to move towards the rivers. So when you move from this broader Brahmaputra to the narrow lane rivers or tributaries, then the tide or the pressure of the water current reduces. That's why they actually migrate. And again, when the monsoon period because in Brahmaputra during the monsoon it becomes voluminous, and that is and leads to huge amount of flood in Assam. This is the area of Brahmaputra in Assam. So they move towards this area because they cannot handle this water pressure or tide present in the monsoon time in Brahmaputra. So when again the monsoon period goes away, they get back into their own Brahmaputra region. So probably this is why we were lucky in seeing those dolphins, traveling from Brahmaputra to Balarpur, because probably the boating and the steamers, they sometimes block there because they move through echolocation. Their cornea is not perfectly in that way to see or hunt through their vision. So they use echolocation, the way the bat does, right, to catch their prey. So they have moved from this area, and definitely now we were not able to see that, probably they have gone back. So this has happened only because they like to stay in a place where there's less pollution, and because of this restrictions and lockdown, the rivers, the industries were not working, and somehow probably possibly that has reduced the water pollution in that particular area, and we could witness this wonderful species in our own locality, we could rather say that. So the threats for this species are pollution and restrictive flow of water, because sometimes we put barrages and dams. Dams and barrages are one of the worst thing. Okay, we need dams, right? That is definitely we need. But then we should also keep in mind to avoid the places which is the very rich in biodiversity, because you think of the area when you put a dam, at certain time we are allowing the water in the river, and certain time we are blocking the water. So what will happen to the species who are residing in the water? They'll be half in one time of their day they will have water, and other time they will not have, so they cannot survive, so they have to move from some other place. This is how we by constructing dams, we threaten the biodiversity of the entire species, not only the animal species as well as the plant and the microbial species as well. So the threats are even poaching that I have mentioned for the oil and the fat, they have been used. And then there is a shipping and the boats are moving around, that it's mentioned that blind dolphin, actually blind means because they have not that cornea that we have to have the clear vision, so they use echolocation. So whenever there is this noise or sound pollution with the streamers and all, that blocks their behavioral pattern. So this is one thing that Tanya ma'am was also saying, that when somebody asks about the pollution level, she has mentioned that it didn't gone down, because see, we have exhausted the resources to a limit. We are not stopping. We should stop somewhere. We should stop somewhere for the emissions of a reduction, because with small lockdown won't suffice what we have, the damage what we have done. But this pandemic has taught us, if you try, we can do. We can even stay in house. We can even try not to disturb them as much as possible for our own benefit, for our own luxury, or for our, for having fun. So if you want, we can do that. So that is what I want to say. And then, so what you need to do is you need to protect the habitat. If you protect the habitat, we protect the biodiversity, we protect the species, and this is how we conserve our species. So this is not very difficult. This is not very tough. If every person do their own part, I think gradually we can compensate the damage that we have done. So see, if you grow one tree or one plant, even if it is dead, it helps so many other trees to grow, and if the trees are there, the flora is there, the fauna is there. So I would like to say that this is the message to everybody. If you want, we can do everything. So thank you, everybody. And we have published earlier in before I joined here, worked a little bit on climate change. There was a Rosa Luxemburg project that we worked into, and this came. So if you want to look more about the climate change and the Indian scenario, you can go through this book. We have put into several chapters, and even we have discussed about the political aspects of climate intervention nationally and internationally. And at a certain point of time, we are working in a project on carbon trading, the CDM projects. After the Kyoto Protocol came into account, that internationally, the UNFCCC, they have decided to come up with a clean development project, which will reduce the carbon emission, and with a target of 2020 that they will reduce 10% of CO2 globally. But then to some extent it was working, but then there are many disputes and critics to it. Probably we can have a discussion sometime else on this issue. So I will, with this, I will end my presentation here today. I hope I've given an overview of where we are staying, and there was just a glimpse of few species that we have. We have huge than this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yasmin, for that extremely informative talk. And I would say we also got an added bonus, because we were expecting you to only talk about the habitat and conservation of our version of Kurmu, but we also got to hear about the Himalayan salamander and the Gangetic dolphins as well. The floor is now open for questions. You can also...
Yeah, I would like to, if you don't mind, I have a meeting and I have to attend. I just say that students can mail me in my mail ID, and I'll be very glad if you please, I'm very sorry, I just have to go to the university.
Sure, ma'am. Okay, so you share the mail ID. And
yes, please. Yeah, I will answer to them, definitely.
All right,
so
thank you so much.
Yeah, with all of your permission, if you allow me, then if I can leave the meeting, I'll be very glad if you please do that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we can now move on to our last talk of the day. Our last speaker today is Professor Ranjan Roy, Head of the Department of Geography and Applied Geography, University of North Bengal. Professor Roy's areas of specialization include cartography, population geography, agricultural geography, urban geography, geography of rural development, remote sensing, and GIS. And he also has numerous publications and research projects to his credit, and currently supervising a number of research scholars who are working under him. Today, he will be talking about climate change and occurrences of natural hazards in Darjeeling Himalaya and empirical analysis. So we